Hi, this is Tracy. Thank you so much for being here. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. In episode 1, I told you that the hierarchy of the senses, the grand ranking that puts sight at the top and smell near the bottom, next to a small placard that reads, "Please do not take this seriously," was not a scientific discovery. It was a philosophical choice made by people who needed the body to be inferior for reasons that were entirely their own problem. Today, I'm going to tell you what they missed. Every sense you have sends its information to your brain through the thalamus. The thalamus is the relay station, the checkpoint. Signal comes up in, the thalamus processes it, passes it up to the cortex, and eventually, after the brain has had a chance to wake up and put on its glasses, you consciously experience seeing or hearing or touching something. Smell doesn't go through the thalamus. Smell goes straight to the parts of the brain that handle emotion and memory. 2 connections, no checkpoint, no relay station, no permission slip required. The signal arrives before you've had a single conscious thought about it. The sense that Plato ranked last, the sense Kant called too subjective for genuine aesthetic experience, the sense Darwin thought was vestigial, the sense that is the most direct connection to the emotional and memory centers of the brain of any sense we have. Plato was not merely wrong. He was wrong in the most perfectly inverted way possible, as if someone had set out to design a mistake that would be maximally incorrect on every level, and succeeded completely. I've been sitting on this for an episode and a half, so here we go. 2 synapses, 2 connections between your nose and the emotional core of your brain. Most sensory pathways involve considerably more steps. The olfactory pathway is, by the standards of neuroscience, practically a direct line. So what this means in practice is, by the time you consciously register what you're smelling, your emotional brain has already assessed it, cross-referenced it against your entire life history, and delivered a verdict. The emotion's already there, the memory's already surfacing, the rational thought, the part that might eventually say, Chanel number 5, how interesting. That part shows up late, slightly out of breath, having missed the meeting. This is why a bakery at 8 in the morning does what it does. You don't decide to feel comforted by bread. The feeling arrives before the decision. You're already inside it by the time the thinking starts. And it's why smell can do something no other sense quite manages. Not remind you of somewhere, but actually return you there. The memory doesn't come up as a photograph. It comes as the room itself, the temperature, the specific quality of the life, the texture of your own attention when you were 7 or 17 or 32 and that room still existed. Marcel Proust described this in 1913. Small cake, cup of tea, childhood in Cambrai, arriving without warning in the middle of Paris. He then wrote approximately 3,000 words about the experience, which tells you everything about how destabilizing it was to be suddenly 8 years old again while trying to have a quiet afternoon. He described the direct route from nose to emotional memory with remarkable accuracy and zero access to neuroscience. He just needed 150 times as many words as the phrase requires. The most expensive piece of scientific observation in literary history. Now, 1 trillion. Your olfactory system has approximately 400 receptor types, and they work in combinations. A widely cited 2014 study estimated that you can theoretically perceive 1 trillion distinct odors. The visual system has 3 color receptor types. 3! We built centuries of color theory on 3. We have the Impressionists. We have entire artistic movements defined by arguments about the color orange on 3 receptor types. The olfactory system has 400, can distinguish by the most conservative estimates an enormous range of smells that makes vision's 3 receptors look rather under-resourced. Our shared critical vocabulary for it is largely the word nice. No color wheel, no harmony theory, nothing remotely equivalent to the vast collective project of building language precise enough to describe what sound does to a human being. For a system with 1 trillion possible inputs. Because 2,000 years ago, someone decided it wasn't worth the trouble. That is, in part, what this channel is here to fix. The fragrance for this episode is Chanel No. 5, which I know is like opening a lecture on great literature with Hamlet. Everyone has an opinion. The opinion is usually more about the reputation than the thing. Nevertheless, Chanel No. 5, Ernest Beaux, 1921. Let me spray it on skin. Chanel, Chanel. All right. Whew. Aldehydes at concentrations that had no precedent. The result didn't smell like a flower. It didn't smell like wood. It didn't smell like anything that had previously existed. It smelled like an idea. The famous shorthand is that it smelled like a woman. I think the more accurate version is that it smelled like the confidence of making something genuinely new and not apologizing for it. But that's not why we're here. Chanel No. 5 is, for an enormous number of people, the most powerful involuntary memory trigger they own. Not because of the aldehydes, but because generations of people have worn it. Children grew up smelling it on their mothers and grandmothers. The fragrance became inseparable from specific people, specific rooms, specific moments. Moments that exist nowhere else, nowhere at all, except through those 2 synapses. No. 5 doesn't just smell beautiful. For millions of people, it returns someone who is no longer here, with a completeness that no photograph matches, and a quality of grief that nothing else produces. 2 synapses. That's the entire mechanism. The people who decided smell was the lowest sense never sat with a bottle of Chanel No. 5 and understood what they were holding. Or they did, and they weren't paying attention. Either way, their loss. And for the past 2,000 years, ours. Every fragrance you have kept, not finished and replaced, but actually kept, sometimes for years, in fact, sometimes indefinitely, is connected through those two synapses to specific people and specific rooms and specific versions of yourself that nothing else can access. The bottles on your shelf are not decorative objects. They're the only technology that can open certain doors. You've been building that archive your entire life without knowing it had a name. Now it does. If you've made it this far and you want to know where this argument goes next, subscribe, please, before you close the tab. I promise the next episode is worse. Thanks for being here. See you next time.